says there's no such thing as a simple solution to college athletics, and we all know that. And we're real excited today to have the former Georgia coach and Marshall and Minuch's OC at Kansas State, Jim Donnan, joins us. Coach, Rock, Minuch, Jimmy B, how are you, man? What's going on? Are you ready for some football?
Ready to go. Been looking forward to it. Everybody's kicking it off pretty quick, so looking like a great year for college football.
Well, you are the guy at Georgia. You know everything about this program. They missed the college football playoff last season after back-to-back national championships, as we all know. You got the Heisman contender in Carson Beck. You know quarterbacks. What's your thoughts on what you've seen and heard about Carson Beck?
Well, everybody in here has got a burr in their saddle about not making the playoffs. You know, it was a tough year, lose one game, and had really one bad quarter, but certainly got a great supporting cast to help Carson, and a defense that I think is much improved with a good kicking game. But as far as Carson himself, he's a really good example of somebody of the old day quarterback that stuck around, stayed in the system, waited his turn, and then when he got it, he came out here and did a great job. So he's probably going to make a lot of money in the pros by sticking one more year. Of course, he's probably going to make a lot of too. I don't know, but that's just the way it is. Hey, Minucci would have had more money at Kansas State back then. Minucci'd be retired now.
Well, Coach, you look at the quarterbacks throughout the SEC, and we saw Jane Daniels. He's headed off to the Commanders, and you watch. You look at all the outstanding quarterbacks that have come through there. But when you say SEC, everybody thinks about the physicality. Everybody thinks about the speed and what have you. Why is that SEC as far as talent, size, physicality? Is that just the mantra for that conference per se, Coach? And you've coached Oklahoma, Kansas State, Marshall, all the above. Is there that mantra through all the teams? They want to keep that specific in that conference?
I just think, sometimes you get too much credit and sometimes you don't get enough. But as a whole, the league just has more D linemen. I mean, you just see all the guys that play in the trenches. And if you look at the difference in some of these playoff games over the last 10, 12 years, that's been a big part of it. But with the rule changes and the portal and all the way these teams are able to draft kids out of other schools and play and make up for guys that they're losing for the either graduation or the draft or going pro, I just think that the game is a lot more towards the speed and quickness, even though physicality is part of it. But it's just a wide open game now. All the RPOs, everything. Tremendous difference in pro football and college, and the fact that the offensive lineman can go another yard and a half down the field on a passing play that they can in the pros, and the college teams take advantage of it.
Coach, will DeBoer have much of a challenge or change going from Oregon to Alabama? Will he have to have any philosophical changes or understanding what works and what doesn't work as far as the SEC community per se?
I've been impressed with the way he's made this transition. Certainly, of all the people you got to replace, you couldn't pick a tougher one than replacing Nick Saban. But, there's a structure in place. He kept some really good people within the system, particularly coaches and some infrastructure guys that help them as far as analysts. And they've got a good team coming back, a really good quarterback. Defensively, they're going to have to replace almost their entire secondary, and that's going to be an issue. But, he did a great job at Washington, did a good job as the OC there at Indiana. And but at the same time, it is a monumental task being the coach at Alabama. There's no question about he's got some huge shoes to fill. And he's got a difficult schedule. I mean, he's got to meet Georgia right off the bat. And it's going to be a real test for him to see how they adjust. But I think it hurt him a little bit losing his OC to the Seattle team out there. I thought that guy did a tremendous job using formations and using his personnel there when he was coaching at Washington. But obviously they all know the system and they got somebody that can move up. But usually speaking, when you've got a different guy calling the plays that you're used to, it's always a little bit of an adjustment. But we'll see how it goes. But our league's going to be tough. I mean, there's a lot of tough games, and now you add Oklahoma and Texas to the league, and we got our hands full. We got to go play at Texas, at Alabama, and at Ole Miss. Not to mention, some of the games we got at home. But I think our roster's made up to maybe fit that challenge.
Coach, I've got a question for you with the realignment of the playoff system. Do you believe that the SEC, and you just talked about how difficult a lot of the schedules are now, they will be clamoring for an 8-4 SEC team to get into the 12-team playoff over a 9-3, 10-2 Big 10 or Big 12 team just because they're saying, well, we're the SEC? Do you see that taking place as games start to develop and we get closer to the playoff picture?
That's certainly a really good question, and it's salient to the whole part of the 12-team playoff. I don't think we're going to get anybody in with 4 losses, though. There's just too many teams around the country that are good enough to get in, that are going to be, maybe 11-1, 10-2. But the one thing that's a saving grace, and we saw this in 1AA when I was at Marshall, you're just not locked into having one bad loss and you're out. Now you can maybe lose 2 games. I don't know if you can lose 3, and certainly 4 is going to be really maxing it out. But your question as a whole, take out the 8 and 4, there's going to be people that say, look who these guys play every week. Look what they got to do. And you add in the fact that Georgia's going to play Clemson in the opener. Texas is going up and playing Michigan. Alabama's playing Wisconsin. So we've got some tough non-conference games to go along with that. But I like the 12-team playoff for one reason, just because last year Georgia needed it, and it's not because I'm a homer. Georgia needed to be in that 4-team mantra there because they lost one game by 4 points or whatever it was, and all of a sudden they go from number 1 to number 6. I mean, that's a tremendous drop there. And I don't know how these the ones, I think I talked to Dan last time we were on there, I don't know how this thing's going to work out as far as these conference championship games too, because let's say you go into the conference championship 12-0 and then you lose that game. Are you going to lose the home game? Are you going to lose the bye? What's going to happen there? So a lot of scheduling problems that are going to come up. I don't necessarily say it's a problem, but scenarios that we're going to all have to adjust to.
Well, speaking of adjusting, when you talked about OU and Texas making that leap into the SEC, and you used to always tell us, look, there's no weak sisters out there. You got to go ahead and play it hard. What will have to be their biggest adjustments, Coach, week in and week out in the SEC?
Well, I feel like without a doubt it's just the fact of recovery. And by that, I mean, you're going to go against some sledgehammers every week, even when you play against some teams that aren't as good. There's just so many. In your initial question about physicality, you're going to see that in game after game. There's no, teams that are just going to be an easy win. You're going to have to go out there and do the job. But where it really bothers you is after the game. And when you factor in the travel involved now, particularly some of these Big Ten teams going cross country and Stanford playing in the ACC and Cal, people like that, I always factored in the travel too. So I just think the recovery, whether you win or lose after a real physical game, is going to be part of it. And then just the overall depth that you have to go and develop on your team, and you have to go against week to week. Every team in our league is, pretty good with their first 22. And then the teams like Alabama and LSU, and some of them are their next 22 are too. But that's what you're going to have to do at OU and Texas. And, I got an OU background. My family still lives out there. Let me tell you something. Y'all have a great show out there, and people look forward to it every week. Those people get up in the morning, and they want to listen to OU football to 12 o'clock at night. I'm talking about in the middle of March. And I mean, it's unbelievable the amount of interest that they got, but before going into our league. But now that's all they talk about, and it's really it's good. But I think they're going to be able to make the move as far as both OU and Texas because they got good teams.
1 minute.
And the other thing's going to help them is their other sports are good. You know, I mean, Texas won the overall sports thing last year. I don't know who won it this year. Oklahoma softball, gymnastics. They're going to all be big for this league too.
Coach, always great to catch up. We will always thank you for your time. And, we're catching up with you since you are the guru of the SEC and Georgia football. So thank you so much.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I got an East Coast joke. If you'll give me 30 seconds, I got to give you that'll probably take a couple weeks to get out to the West Coast.
All right.
So this woman was calling up to her son and said, look, you got to get up and go to church. And he kept staying in bed. She goes upstairs and knocks on the door. He said, what do you want? I said, I want you to go to church. And she said, again, go to church. And he said, well, you tell me why. She said, number one, I'm your mother, and I'm telling you. Number two, you're 52 years old and you're living at home. And number three, you're the preacher.
Thank you, Coach.
That's awesome.
That's great.
Love
All
you,
right,
Coach.
thank you.
Always great to talk to you.
Oh, man. Coach Jim Donnan leaving us with a nice little joke. Good job.
That was
It's not every day you got a Hall of Fame coach
Oh,
just
man.
throwing out a nice joke for you. But, hey, he's brought to you today by All City Towing. They are hiring dispatchers, call takers, lot attendants, drivers, customer service personnel. Enjoy benefits like the state's most advanced towing equipment, set work schedules, a healthy 401k employer match, healthy benefits, employer-paid life insurance, and how about a monthly fuel allowance? So ready to take your career to the next level? Visit them at allcitytowing.com. All City Towing, where your future is on the move. Coming up, Aaron Rodgers speaks about getting fined. And how about the Rose Bowl? Requesting to be left out of the college